Charles, I think we need softer energy in the room, he said, stirring his coffee like it held the answers to all his problems. His eyes didn't quite meet mine, which was funny considering this was the same guy who used to brag about closing deals with Fortune 500 companies. But now he was scared of a man who asked for budget justifications and followed up on missed deadlines. That was me, Charles Hoffman, 49 years old, Director of Operations, formerly indispensable, now apparently intimidating. The words he actually used were, "My son thinks your management style is too intense for the team. Can we dial that back?" There it was, the iceberg tip, and I'd already seen the whole thing coming for months. His son Andrew had been appointed as VP of Brand Innovation 3 months ago, which really meant he'd bulldozed his way in with an MBA from Wharton, consulting buzzwords, and Daddy's willingness to create a position that didn't need to exist. Andrew Blackstone's new title came with big ideas about digital transformation and modernizing our operational frameworks. Translation: he wanted to fix things that weren't broken because it would look good on his resume when he inevitably jumped ship to another company. Kid had never worked a day outside the family business, never dealt with a vendor crisis at 2 a.m., never had to explain to a customer why their $15,000 handbag was delayed because someone in procurement forgot to renew a contract. But he had opinions, lots of them. I'd watched this play out over the past quarter. Andrew would waltz into our weekly operations meetings with his leather portfolio and start questioning processes I'd refined over 12 years. "Why do we still use manual authorization for rush orders?" he'd ask, like he'd discovered fire. Never mind that those manual checks had prevented $800,000 in fraudulent transactions just last year. "Have we considered automating our vendor relationship management?" "Sure, kid, let's automate the relationship I built with Giuseppe in Milan, who saved our fall launch when half of Europe was on strike. I'm sure a chatbot will handle that just fine." The breaking point came 2 weeks ago during our quarterly vendor review. I was presenting our performance metrics: 99.2% on-time delivery, 15% cost reduction year over year, 0 compliance violations for 18 consecutive months. Numbers that made other companies call us asking how we did it. Andrew interrupted halfway through my presentation. "Charles, this is all very impressive, but I think we're missing the bigger picture here. We should be focusing on scalable solutions that leverage technology to optimize our operational efficiency paradigms." I stopped talking. The room went quiet. Even Richard looked uncomfortable. "Andrew," I said, keeping my voice level, "what specific technology are you suggesting, and how would it improve on a 99.2% success rate?" He fumbled through some response about AI integration and predictive analytics, buzzwords he'd learned in business school, but couldn't apply to our actual business. Meanwhile, Sarah, my operations manager, was taking notes, probably wondering if she should update her resume. That's when I realized what was really happening. This wasn't about efficiency or innovation. This was about Andrew establishing dominance, showing everyone that Daddy's boy could push around the old-timer who'd built the systems keeping this place profitable. So I smiled. Not the fake corporate smile. I mean the calm, controlled smile I reserve for when I've already made my decision. I told Richard after the meeting, of course, I'll be more mindful of the team dynamics. What I didn't say was mindful of what? My results? My expectations? My 12 years of keeping this place running like a Swiss watch while his son learned about business from textbooks? That afternoon, I walked out of his office, past the junior staff who still talked about the time I saved a $2.3 million product launch by rerouting shipments through backup vendors when our primary supplier had a warehouse fire. Past the break room where photos from company retreats showed me accepting awards for operational excellence. Past Andrew's corner office, where he was probably drafting another presentation about synergistic optimization opportunities. I sat at my desk, the same desk I'd occupied for over a decade, covered with industry awards and thank you notes from vendors, and opened my laptop. The screensaver was a photo from our warehouse in New Jersey, the one that processed 60% of our holiday inventory, the one that ran so smoothly our competitors tried to poach our logistics team twice a year. I stared at that photo for a long moment, thinking about everything I'd built here. The vendor relationships that took years to cultivate, the emergency protocols that prevented disasters, the staff training programs that turned college kids into industry experts, the quality control systems that maintained our reputation. All of it designed, implemented, and maintained by someone who was apparently too intimidating for the modern workplace. Then I opened a new document and began typing the most polite, devastating resignation letter their HR system had probably ever processed. No angry paragraphs, no dramatic accusations, just a simple statement of fact. I was done, effective immediately. No drama, no notice, no explanations, just done. Before we get to the good stuff, and trust me, it gets really good, let me tell you what I actually did for Blackstone and Associates Luxury. For 12 years, I wasn't just managing operations. I was the operations. Vendor contracts, inventory forecasting, fulfillment systems, customer service escalations, supply chain logistics, even the complex coordination for their white glove delivery service for clients spending $50,000 or more per order. All of it crossed my desk. Most people don't realize how delicate these systems are. You give one person too much control, you risk fraud. Give too little, the whole chain bottlenecks when something goes wrong. And in luxury retail, something always goes wrong. Shipments get delayed, vendors have capacity issues, customers change their minds about custom orders. The magic happens when you have someone who knows every moving piece and can adjust on the fly. That someone was me, for 12 years. When I logged out that final time, I did it properly, professionally. Then I systematically began disconnecting myself from a machine that had no idea how much it depended on me. First thing I did was review every active contract I'd signed or co-signed over the past 2 years. Turns out there were 47 of them. Everything from the Italian leather supplier who provided materials for 40% of our fall collection, to the specialty logistics company that handled our white glove deliveries, to the authentication service that verified pre-owned luxury items for our consignment program. Andrew didn't even know half these relationships existed. Why would he? They weren't on any org chart. They were built through years of late-night calls, personal visits to production facilities, and the kind of trust you can't buy with a corporate credit card. I started with Giuseppe Martinelli at Pelletteria Fiorentina in Florence. We'd worked together for 8 years. His leather goods were featured in every major fashion magazine, and he gave us exclusive access to certain materials that our competitors couldn't get. The relationship was worth about $3.2 million annually, but more importantly, it was what made our products special. I sent Giuseppe a simple email. Due to organizational changes, I'll no longer be your primary contact at Blackstone and Associates. It's been an honor working with you, and I wish you continued success. I attached a bottle of wine as a digital gift certificate, a 2015 Barolo from his hometown region. His response came back in Italian, but I caught enough to understand he was upset. Something about losing familia, and who do I trust now? Giuseppe doesn't speak much English, and Andrew definitely doesn't speak Italian. Good luck with that relationship, kid. Next, I canceled my consulting retainer with Luxury Logistics Worldwide, the company that handled our most complex deliveries, white glove service to penthouses in Manhattan, climate-controlled transport for temperature-sensitive items, even coordinating with private jet schedules for our international clients. LLW didn't just deliver products, they delivered experiences. The retainer was worth $180,000 annually, but it came with something money can't buy: priority status. When other companies were waiting 3 weeks for delivery slots, we got same-day service. When hurricanes shut down shipping lanes, we had backup routes already arranged. I terminated the retainer with a professional email explaining that Blackstone was restructuring their fulfillment approach. Within an hour, my contact at LLW called my personal phone. "Charles, what's happening over there? We've got 15 other companies trying to get the access you're giving up." I told him I wasn't with the company anymore. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Well, if you land somewhere else, call us first." Then I moved on to the technical side. Our inventory management system was a custom setup I'd designed with our IT team over 3 years. It integrated with vendor databases, customer service platforms, and financial reporting in ways that saved us probably 200 hours of manual work per week. But it required constant fine-tuning, and more importantly, it required someone who understood how all the pieces fit together. I didn't break anything. I just methodically revoked my own access levels and administrative privileges. Every emergency authorization code, every override permission, every backdoor access I'd created for crisis management, gone. The system would keep running for routine operations, but the moment something unusual happened, it would require manual intervention from someone who understood the logic behind my decision trees, except I was the only one who understood that logic. The fulfillment center in New Jersey was my masterpiece. I'd spent 18 months redesigning their entire operation from receiving to shipping. We went from 72-hour processing times to same-day fulfillment for 85% of orders. Our accuracy rate was 99.7%, compared to an industry average of 94%. Luxury customers don't forgive mistakes, so that 5% difference was everything. But the system relied heavily on automated workflows with intelligent routing. Rush orders went through different processes than standard shipments. International deliveries had customs documentation that generated automatically. Returns required authentication protocols to prevent fraud. All of it was built around permission levels and authorization codes that I controlled. I spent my final hour systematically archiving every process document, every troubleshooting guide, every vendor contact list into a password-protected folder on the shared drive. Then I labeled it for your restructure and logged out for the last time, and then I left. Walked right out into the September afternoon, picked up my favorite sandwich from the deli down the street, and watched the first domino wobble. Richard thought he was managing personalities. He didn't realize he'd just removed the only person keeping his company from eating itself alive. The next morning was the first time in 12 years I woke up without checking my phone. No urgent emails about vendor crises, no calls from the fulfillment center about shipping delays, no 6 a.m. video conferences with suppliers in different time zones trying to resolve production issues before they became customer problems. Just silence. The kind of silence that used to make me anxious. Now it felt like freedom. I made my coffee slowly, read the newspaper cover to cover, even did the crossword puzzle. For just a moment, muscle memory almost made me open my laptop to check the company dashboard, review overnight orders, scan for any red flags in the system alerts. Old habits die hard when you've been the guardian of someone else's empire for over a decade. But no, I was done. There would be no more midnight calls about authentication problems, no more creative solutions for Andrew's half-baked initiatives, no more fixing problems that could have been avoided if anyone had bothered to listen to the guy who'd been doing this since before Andrew learned what a P&L statement was. Instead, I opened my personal laptop and started reviewing job opportunities I'd been ignoring for years. Amazing what's out there when you're not spending 60 hours a week keeping someone else's dream alive. It started like all good corporate disasters do, with a very polite, very panicked email. Subject line, urgent, missing authorization for Q4 launch. From Janet Morrison in their accessories division, a woman who used to send me thank you cards during busy seasons and always remembered my birthday. The email was CC'd to about 15 people who had no business reading it, but were definitely about to panic. Hi team, following up on authorization codes for the holiday luxury line launch. System shows all approvals as pending authorization with no valid approver assigned. Standard override protocols aren't working. Need resolution by EOD, or we miss our launch window and retail partner deadlines. Please advise ASAP. Of course, they couldn't find valid approvals. I was the one who set up those workflows 3 years ago. I was the one with override access for emergency situations. Everything was filed exactly where it should be. In systems that now recognize my access had been revoked and couldn't find a replacement authorization source. By 10 a.m., the emails were flying. Sarah from operations, Pete from merchandising, even quiet Linda from accounting who never bothered anyone about anything. All of them hitting reply, all asking the same basic question. Who handles Charles's stuff now? Nobody had an answer. Meanwhile, their main fulfillment center in New Jersey, the one I'd redesigned from top to bottom, stopped processing premium orders at 11:42 a.m. Just stopped. The automated system flagged every outbound shipment for their white glove service as unauthorized personnel override required. At first, someone probably thought it was a glitch. Maybe they called IT. Maybe they tried rebooting the servers. Maybe they even got Andrew involved, since he was so passionate about digital solutions and technological optimization. None of it worked. Why? Because the system wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what I'd programmed it to do when no valid supervisor was logged in to handle exceptions and emergency protocols. Hours passed, orders backed up. The customer service team started fielding calls from clients asking why their tracking numbers weren't updating. Retail partners began sending polite but increasingly urgent emails about delayed shipments. And somewhere in all that chaos, Andrew was probably having his first real education about the difference between theoretical knowledge and operational reality. I didn't hear about any of this directly. No one called me, which was probably smart on their part. I found out because Women's Wear Daily posted a brief item in their Tuesday industry roundup. Supply chain hiccups delay holiday launch at Blackstone and Associates. Sources cite internal restructuring challenges. That made me laugh. Not a mean laugh, just the quiet satisfaction of watching gravity work exactly like physics says it should. The really delicious part came around 3 p.m. when Giuseppe from Florence tried calling the main Blackstone number. He needed to confirm specifications for a rush order. Some celebrity stylist wanted custom leather goods for a red carpet event, the kind of request that usually generated $200,000 in orders if handled right. Reception transferred him to Andrew's office. Andrew, who doesn't speak Italian and has probably never seen a tannery in his life, somehow managed to insult Giuseppe by suggesting they could streamline the communication process through digital channels moving forward. Giuseppe hung up. Then he called me. "Carlo," he said. He'd been calling me Carlo for 8 years. "What is happening with your company? This boy, he knows nothing. He wants to send me forms to fill out like I am some vendor from a catalog." I explained that I was no longer with Blackstone. Giuseppe was quiet for a moment, then said, "Ah, I understand now. This explains much. If you find new work, you call me immediately, yes?" That same afternoon, Luxury Logistics Worldwide sent an email to Blackstone's purchasing department. They were terminating the priority service agreement due to changes in primary contact relationships and uncertainty about ongoing partnership dynamics. Translation: they couldn't trust someone they'd never worked with to understand their complex client requirements. The email was forwarded to Andrew, who apparently responded by asking if they could explore alternative partnership structures that align with our evolving operational paradigms. They didn't reply. By 5 p.m., the quiet crisis had become not so quiet. Sarah sent out a company-wide email asking if anyone had access to Charles's vendor contact database or knew the passwords for critical system overrides. The tone was professional, but I could read between the lines. They were starting to realize that intimidating and indispensable might have been the same thing all along. The real fun started during their quarterly board presentation the following week. Andrew walked in like he owned the place, which technically he did, at least partially. Designer suit, confident stride, leather portfolio that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. He was ready to debut his operational modernization initiative, basically taking credit for systems I'd built while explaining how much better they'd be once he fixed them. The boardroom was full. Senior partners, outside investors, even Richard's brother who rarely showed up unless something was seriously wrong. Everyone was waiting to see how the golden boy would handle his first major presentation since my departure. Andrew started strong, talking about streamlining inefficiencies and leveraging technology for competitive advantage. He had slides with colorful charts and buzzwords that sounded impressive if you didn't know what they actually meant. Then he clicked the remote to show Q4 projections, and the screen displayed an error message: data source not available, contact system administrator. That's when the confidence started to crack. He tried again, same error. Then again. The room was getting uncomfortable. You could hear someone's watch ticking, probably wondering if they should suggest a bathroom break while Andrew figured out his technical difficulties. Pete from merchandising, bless him, gently cleared his throat. "Andrew, the forecasting models Charles built require his authorization codes to access. His permissions expired when he left the company." "Well, can't we just reset them?" Andrew asked, like he was talking about a Wi-Fi password. The CFO, Helen Barnes, shook her head. "Those systems integrate with vendor databases, inventory tracking, customer service platforms, and financial reporting. Charles designed them as a unified network. We'd need his passwords or we'd have to rebuild everything from scratch." Silence. The expensive kind that costs money just by existing. Andrew tried to recover. "Okay, but we have backups, right? Historical data we can work with?" That's when Pete delivered the killing blow. Charles archived all documentation in a secure folder before he left. The folder requires his password to access. More silence. You could practically hear the stock price dropping. Margaret Sinclair, the senior partner who'd survived 3 recessions and had 0 patience for incompetence, leaned forward. How long would it take to rebuild these systems? The IT director, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, spoke up. "Conservative estimate? 8 to 10 months. That's assuming we can hire someone with Charles's specific knowledge of our vendor relationships, operational requirements, and system architecture. That's when Richard finally spoke, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. What about bringing Charles back as a consultant? Helen Barnes looked at him like he'd suggested hiring a unicorn. Charles isn't answering calls. HR sent 4 emails. Legal tried reaching out through his attorney. No response. Because I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown, phone on silent, watching this disaster unfold through industry contacts who were texting me play-by-play updates. The meeting got worse. Andrew tried showing alternate slides about future growth opportunities, but without current data, he was just making stuff up. When Margaret asked for specific ROI projections, he started stammering about preliminary estimates and pending analysis. The final nail came when someone asked about the Giuseppe situation. Turns out our Italian supplier had already started conversations with 2 of our competitors. The celebrity stylist order, it went to our biggest rival, along with Giuseppe's recommendation to work with people who understand quality and relationships. That $200,000 order became a $2 million loss when 3 other high-profile clients followed the same path. That evening, I got a call from James Patterson at Sterling & Hayes, one of Blackstone's biggest competitors. Charles, I don't know what's happening over there, but half their retail partners are calling us about fulfillment alternatives. 3 of their vendors have reached out asking if we need suppliers. Any chance you're interested in a conversation? I told him I'd think about it, but we both knew what that meant. The next few days were like watching a slow-motion car crash from a comfortable distance. The holiday line launch got pushed back 4 weeks. Their premium delivery service went offline indefinitely. 2 major retail partners quietly started listing products as temporarily unavailable. Customer complaints spiked 300% in a single week. And Andrew? Andrew was learning the difference between theoretical knowledge and actual expertise. Turns out digital transformation doesn't mean much when the digital systems were designed by someone who's no longer there to explain how they work. The insurance company started asking uncomfortable questions about operational stability. Questions that required detailed documentation about processes, procedures, and contingency planning. Documentation that was sitting in a password-protected folder labeled "For your restructure." 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Sterling & Hayes' executive conference room. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, the smell of success instead of desperation. James Patterson was there, along with their CEO and head of operations. Charles, the CEO, said, "We don't want what you had at Blackstone. We want what you are. We want you to build something better here, from the ground up. Full autonomy, equity participation, and a team that will actually listen to you." I didn't say yes immediately, but when I asked about their vendor relationships, their technology infrastructure, their growth plans, I liked what I heard. These were people who understood that operational excellence wasn't about buzzwords. It was about results. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my new office, looking at operational metrics that make my old colleagues weep with envy. Sterling & Hayes just announced a 40% improvement in fulfillment efficiency and a 25% reduction in operational costs. We're opening 2 new distribution centers and have a waiting list of luxury brands wanting to work with us. Blackstone & Associates is still restructuring. Andrew was quietly moved to business development, which is corporate speak for somewhere he can't break anything. Important. Richard hired a consulting firm to rebuild their systems at roughly 10 times what it would have cost to just treat their existing expert with respect. Sometimes I see their job postings. They're always looking for experienced operations professionals with proven track records in luxury retail. The salary ranges keep getting higher. I don't apply. Not because I'm vindictive, but because some bridges are worth burning, especially when you're the one who built them and you know how to build better ones somewhere else.